Okay. Well, Robert, go ahead. I think we've got a recording. If they can't see it live, they'll have to look at the recording.
Okay. Well, I'm really I'm not prepared for anything except to sort of give you a little bit of. I assumed that everyone had seen the film, but so I'm not. I wasn't prepared to sort of give a talk. I was more expecting to have some Q&A and talk to you about the
Mm-hmm.
film and to give you a little bit of the insider scoop on what I learned in the course of making the film. As those of you who've seen the film probably already know, we decided not to do a single story. We decided to take the big picture of gold and try and break it down into regions and try and deal with it as a global phenomenon, something that would enable us to make connections between things that you might not put together ordinarily, so that a miner in China would be connected to, to someone who was working in the Peruvian Andes, doing artisanal gold mining, to the person who ends up buying the gold in jewelry. And we tried to show the whole sort of sector through its production, through to its manufacture, and to the end consumer, in a way that would let people make connections, like I say, that wouldn't be made ordinarily if you just told one story. Like if we had taken the one story of the mine and the tailings pond that collapsed and you know sent toxic waste into the whole watershed around it. If we just told that one story, everyone could just look at it and say, well, that's just one story. It's a terrible story, but, too bad. But because we were able to film in China and in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we were able to film in the US and in Canada and Peru. We tried to make these connections. And so far, from the screenings that we've had, and pre-pandemic, because it's a 2-year-old film, and we had our first screenings in the first few months just before COVID hit. So we had screenings where people were, hundreds of people in a theater, and we would have a discussion afterwards. It was quite wonderful. But it seems that people appreciate this kind of view that is global, that is not regional. It can't be dismissed because that's just a quirk of some poorly managed mine site. It's an industry that you probably all know is very it's a dirty industry. It's just, that's all there is to it. It really is a dirty industry. And no matter what people try to convince you that it doesn't have to be that way, or it's not always that way, in the end, it's an environmentally polluting in industry. It's an industry that often exploits people, especially in some of the less developed countries. And it's also it relies on cheap labor in many parts of the world. It's full of corruption in some parts as well. It's really a dirty industry, and it's kind of ironic because it's connected to a product that is seen to be so beautiful and so coveted by so many people. So we wanted to do this so that people couldn't get off the hook too easily, and couldn't just say, well, that's just a single story. This is across the board. It's not a good industry, not a clean industry. It's very hard to see how it could be cleaned up. Although we tried to do that in the film towards the end, say, there are options. It could be less dirty. It could be cleaner. You could clean it up in many ways. And here are some ideas that people are actually actively pursuing. But at the same time, it is it needs work. It needs people like you and us and many people around who are trying to change the industry from the inside, Or jewelers, for instance, we had many jewelers come to some of our screenings who were just shocked and said, well, I'm never going to buy that gold again. I'm going to make sure I get my gold from reputable sources, from sources that are at least trying to be sustainable, trying to be clean, trying to be socially just with their employees and so on. So there are jewelers now who are doing that. And we need a lot of people to make change in this particular industry. And the film is just one sort of small step in that direction.
Have you done other films? What was your path to discovering that this was something that needed exposure?
Yes, I did. I have been involved in now 3 of these kind of films that look at a commodity, a coveted commodity, for want of a better term, coveted commodity, that we went out and we traveled the world and we discovered what that industry was like. We did a film called Diamond Road that got a lot of attention about the diamond industry, filmed in Africa, in various parts of Africa, South Africa, and Europe, and the South Asia, and filmed again in North America. We did a similar thing where we looked at all the different, supply chain. It's quite a similar in a way, a supply chain where you have people, very poor people, who are mining diamonds for these very, very rich people, mostly in Europe and North America, or in India in some cases. And we were very successful. That film was done in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And we followed up that film with another feature doc called Raw Opium, which is a very different commodity, but it was about the opium trade and the failure of the war on drugs by tracking and following that from the ground up, basically, from the farmers in northern India and Afghanistan who grew the poppies, right through to the manufacture and the exploitation of that commodity. So we've had 2 other films like this, that have tried to make this, sort of given the big picture through, but always through individual stories, right? Through individuals at different points on the pipeline, who and how their lives are altered or affected by their engagement with the commodity. So they did have similarities that way, but of course the commodity is very different, and the details of it were very different.
A lot of criminality in each of them.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was that?
A lot of criminality
yeah.
in each of the trades.
Absolutely, lots.
So, Robert, how did this film impact you?
Well, it's a hard question to answer, because sometimes it's not like a penny dropping and all of a sudden the world changes. It's a very gradual understanding of the complexities of a particular interest. Can you tell them I'll be 10 minutes? Can you tell them I'll be 10 minutes? I'm sorry. I'm just in the middle of my webinar here thing. Can you tell them I'll be 10 minutes? Sorry. We're in the middle of a bit of a snowstorm, and I called a cab to take me home from my friends here 2 hours ago, thinking I'd get home. No problem. I'll be home at 8 o'clock. No problem. And I can have this. But they didn't show up, and now they just showed up at the door. They didn't call me or anything. They said they were going to call me 10 minutes before. So they got to wait.
So it could be more than 10 minutes, but whatever.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Anyway, so yes, so it's pretty hard to say exactly how it impacted me. But I would say that what I did learn is, when I approach a film like this, I'll often start out thinking that sorry, I'm on a webinar. I know. Just tell him I'm gonna be a bit.
How long?
He didn't call. He said he was going to call before he showed up.
How long?
At least 15, 20 minutes.
Tell him to turn the meter on then, because he won't want to just sit there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. So I think what I approach the films that I make like this in a way that I don't set out with a particular strong point of view. I just say, this is an area that's interesting. This would be an area that I'd like to investigate. I'd like to get into it. I'd like to mine this area, in this case, try and understand it better, try and understand what the complexities are. I start to read, start to talk to people in the industry and so on. And I think I would have thought in this case, because I had the diamond experience, that it would be similar to the diamond experience, but it was quite different in some ways. But as I got into it, and I tried to be fair, as a documentary filmmaker, you want to be fair, you want to listen, and you want to hear people out and ask the questions of the people that you think might be able to put some perspective on your understanding. Sorry, yeah, what's that?
Riva wanted to know if you could share your contact information. So,
Oh, sure, yeah, sure.
since
And I was
she's going to
wondering,
see the movie later.
Yeah, sure.
and I was wondering if you could expand on why this is different than the other diamond. And I have to wonder, how many Kevlar suits do you have? You're
Yeah,
you're
no,
dealing with some
pretty shady characters.
shady individuals, pretty feisty characters.
Yeah,
But how
for
did
sure.
this differ diamonds
Well,
versus the
yeah.
other commodities?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, the diamond industry is a more how would I put it? It's maybe a flashier industry because there's diamonds are very rare. I mean, gold is rare too, relatively rare, but diamonds are very rare, and beautiful diamonds are really, really rare. And the world of diamonds has, people sell individual diamonds. They're valued by their carats. It's a different kind of thing. Gold is a commodity that can be melted down, and gold from anywhere in the world can be taken and melted down, and it becomes anonymized, right? Whereas diamonds are a little different because diamonds have character. They have a certain quality. People can determine, they can say this diamond came from this part of the world, or they can look at a diamond and see the purity of the diamond and then the impurities of the diamonds. Gold is just this, it's an anonymized kind of commodity that is often the manufacturers just take it from wherever they get it. So it can come from whatever source. Where it's a little different now. Diamonds have become much more aware, or the diamond industry has become much more aware of doing fair trade, or of doing more clean diamonds coming from certain places, and having imprimaturs on their diamonds to say this came from northern Canada from a sustainable source or whatever. Gold isn't like that. It moves across the planet. It used to be, as you know, probably a form of currency. It's got a long history of being used not just in jewelry but also in cell phones and other places in our electronics. It's a different kind of commodity that way.
Did you get any pushback from Canadian companies? Because Canada is a major mining country.
Yeah, we did. We got not just pushback, but we actually tried to, as any good documentary maker will do, we tried to, if you remember the scene in Mount Polly, where the Mount Polly disaster, the tailings pond burst and sent toxic waste into the Fraser River watershed, which is a major spawning ground for salmon. And we thought, well, they had that accident back in whenever. Why don't we talk to them and find out what they, what they're doing to clean it up, how they feel about it, what it means for the future, how they're going to do business for the future. We were in touch with them many times, and they just wouldn't talk to us because it's a very secretive industry. They know it's a dirty industry. They don't want to be. They want to control the message, is what they told me. Directly, they told me, we don't want to be in your film. We're going to send our own message out to the public about what we're doing to clean up our act. So Yeah. go
Have the
ahead.
tribes been able to have any effect? The treaties and so
Yeah,
forth?
yeah, they have, but the governments are beholden to the mining companies. Here in Canada, as I believe you mentioned, Terry, that Canada has huge vested interest in mining, not just in Canada but around the world. So a lot of politicians are beholden to the people who run and own these mining companies, or on boards, or or major uh, shareholders or executives in these mining companies. So it's very hard for them to crack down on these industries because of their close ties. It's 50 or 60% of all mining is gold mining, and mining generally comes out of Toronto in Canada. Some of the finance, a lot of the financing comes out of Canada, and so it's a tough one to get through to politicians about, and the individual bands and band councils of the areas where these things happen, where these accidents happen, or where these disasters occur. They are speaking out all the time, but it's very hard to get satisfaction. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm interested in for several years now. I've been studying, trying to find the soul or the identity of America. Which is a capitalistic system,
Mhm.
and it's all over the world. I'm glad I saw this because it shows how well, I call it, for want of a better word, I call it the brutality of that consciousness that pushes people to their death, even, without flinching.
Yeah.
Maybe you said some of the jewelers and producers of jewelry, gold jewelry, don't know what's going on out there, but you got to believe that they do at some point, that it's killing people, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they had many accidents. They didn't mention that. You didn't mention that in the film, but do they have as many accidents as the coal industry, used to have?
Not maybe not quite as many as the coal industry historically had, but it's certainly, they do have accidents, as we did allude to one or two. I think one in Brazil, the Mariana, was a huge disaster and wiped out little villages along the river that it was on, and and many of them are kept secret. Like China has had many accidents, but they just keep it
Yeah.
hush hush, right? So the ones that come out more frequently are the ones that are in uh, more democratically inclined countries like Canada or like the U.S. It'll happen, and yeah.
So socialism won't fix it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. No, that's yes, that's right. It doesn't. Yeah, it not quite. So so yeah, that's there are many accidents, but how many, we're not sure because of
Yeah.
the secrecy around them. And sometimes, I know that there have been some in Tigray. There was an accident, and they're very very quiet. Depending on the level of the freedom of the press, I would think we know more or less about those accidents. And not just the accidents, but they're the things like in China where the miners were, basically silicosis was killing them because they didn't have proper ventilation systems. And of course, the Chinese government's not going to cop to that. They're not going to admit to that and announce that they've done something terribly wrong, because there are these kind of strange, this capitalist, socialist, or communist amalgam of interests that are at play. Yes. Hi, Richard. Can't hear you.
Muted,
You're
I
muted.
think.
It doesn't say muted, but
Oh,
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah. That's good.
Dr. Lang, but you had such a positive, thanks for your patience and waiting. Such a positive note at the end, the women's co-op. Was that a onesie or is that?
No, that is happening.
A larger.
That's a larger thing, and that's the only and if we didn't believe it was just a onesie, we wouldn't have probably put it in there. It is happening. Similar things are happening now around the world, and we wanted to show that it's not a completely dismal kind of future. The thing is, and we had to come to terms with it, and that's partly an answer to your earlier question, what did I learn here from it? But you can't all of a sudden say to 10 million miners, artisanal miners around the world, okay, look, you got to stop mining because this isn't good, because mercury's going up into the atmosphere and it's killing people. You can't do that. These people rely on it. It's part of their bread and butter, really. It's what they rely on to feed their families. So for someone like us from the West or from industrialized nations to go out and say, we got to change this and go and lecture to people about what they're doing wrong is not really healthy. And so there are initiatives like the one in DRC. There's an initiative in Peru as well. We were going to film there, but it was apparently kind of difficult right at that moment because there was a lot of crime going on, and we were a bit concerned about our well-being. But we filmed at DRC, and there are a number of initiatives like that. There are organizations that are even doing work in various parts of the world, in Ouagadougou, in Upper Volta, and they're all really, I'd say probably 10, 15 solid initiatives trying to get artisanal miners to do their mining without polluting with mercury. And in the same way, there are initiatives now to try and clean up the bigger industrial mines. Those are less successful in a way because whatever you do, if you're doing a big industrial mine, you're digging a big hole and you're going to alter the environment. But they're trying to do it in a way where the leaching isn't as harmful.
So are the newer, less toxic methods of refining gold, are they more expensive? Why haven't people taken them up?
Well, as they say, as the fellow says, the Nobel Prize winner says in the film, says the mining industry is a very conservative industry, for one thing. They're not looking for, let's do things, in a cleaner way. We've always done it this way, so why wouldn't we keep doing it? So they need pressure on them to say, no, you can't keep doing it like this. If you're going to do it, you got to clean up your act. And there are a number of initiatives. The one that we looked at is actually now in place, and they're actually changing certain mines to follow those new protocols and those new approaches. So these things are happening, but they're happening slowly, and they will happen slowly until people just demand change, until they demand gold from a cleaner source, at least somewhat sustainable. Sustainability is a bit of a myth there in these terms, because big mines are hardly sustainable. But there might be a way to do it in smaller, more like artisanal approaches, even if you're digging into the ground. But
It would seem as though peroxide and cornstarch would be less expensive than mercury.
It absolutely is. It certainly is. It really is, and certainly less polluting. They have to get used to the idea that they can do it differently, and they do have to do certain things differently. I can't give you the technical details on that, but it isn't outrageous, and they're starting. So that was again not a onesie either. It wasn't just a single. There are others trying to develop not as toxic approaches to refining the gold.
Does there exist a list of who's selling cleaner gold?
Yes, there are. There are whole organizations now that are working in that area. The one that I know quite a bit about is IRMA. It's the bigger mines have joined, just a few, and some jewelry companies too, Tiffany's included, who are working. IRMA, it's called the IRMA International Mining Initiative or something, but it's called IRMA. You'll find it if you look online. And then there are fair trade gold outfits. They're the one person who's in our film. He's also a different, I'm not sure what it's called. I don't have it right with me, but it's another organization. I think if you look on our website, Richard, you'll find that we have a number of the resources under the shadowofgold.com is our website. And we have a, take action area. And under the take action area, we have a number of websites that will give you information about where, and we've done our research. So there's some that are just greenwashing, like so many companies tend to do. But in this case, it's, sorry, I'm gonna turn this off here. Yeah, you'll find that all there, and I think you'll find it a useful resource. They're trying to make a difference, and they are making a difference, but it's slow. It's very slow.
Good information, friend. Thank you very much.
Good, good.
Yeah, I just, this broke my heart, really,
Yeah,
to see such brutality to the environment and to other people. And when I saw the displays of sales windows for China gold, it's just, oh my gosh, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know how we could invest so much of our soul into gold, or into anything, even diamonds.
yeah.
I'm always suspicious of someone, and it's just like the cost of a funeral now is going up because you can sell almost anything to anybody.
Yeah.
If you touch the right emotions, and that's what gold and diamonds and things like that will do, is, it can make you believe that that's worthwhile.
Yeah. I'd like to just add one note there before we sign off here. There's a really, the miner in China, Zhu Detian, his name was Zhu Detian. He, he had this terrible illness, and he got silicosis, and he couldn't afford the treatment. And the film aired in Sweden, and a school teacher there who used to teach in China saw the film, and he got in touch with us, and he said, you know what? For the amount of money that he needs for his medical treatment, I'd love to do this for 3 years. Can I send him some money? So through the filmmaker who we collaborated with in China, he's still alive. He's doing okay.
Wow.
He's left the mining industry, but he's been surviving now because his drugs have been paid for by this school teacher in Sweden. So, it's quite amazing. That's just a very simple, very direct example, but I think we can all make a difference by having our voices heard, and by we talk to jewelers, ask them where the gold comes from, where their diamonds come from, where do these things come from? And if you don't know, I'm not willing to buy from you. People would start doing that. That's where it hits home for those people. And many of the jewelers that we've shown it to are really, they really were touched by it, and they don't want to be part of this industry, even though, they might have heard that there were some problems, but seeing it in front of them like that was really made a difference. And I hope it spreads. I'll give you I'm happy to share my email address if you'd like. If you want to send a note, or you want to ask me about anything, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And
go ahead, please.
Do take a look at the shadowofgold.com, because there's lots of interesting resources there, and there's short clips of film clips and so on, that if you want to share it with anybody, you're more than welcome, and I hope that's helpful. My email address is lang, LANG, RG1, number 1, at gmail.com. My email address is lang, LANG, RG1, number 1, at gmail.com.
Thank you, but I fear for what that taxi cab
Yeah, the meter has been running, so
No.
I better sign off. I'm sorry about this. It's just the product of this kind of day and the weather that we've had. Otherwise, I would have been home a long time ago and we could have had a longer chat. But if you'd like, I'm happy to get on another time for a few minutes or another half hour if you want. More than welcome to chat a bit more.
Thank you so much for talking with us tonight, and thanks for the film. That's a lot of work, and I'm like Richard. How many Kevlar vests do you have?
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate your watching the film and your interest.